As a parent of any child, you always tell your child, if somebody hurts you, speak up. Mom and Dad will step in and make it right. There comes a time, I don't mean to cry, when your son, your daughter is telling you they've been hurt, and the feeling that you can't do anything about it.
Painful helplessness felt by Mitch Freeze and these parents who've never met, but all have children with developmental challenges.
My daughter Nancy was 31. She's severely autistic.
Here is Nolan Raleigh, is Down syndrome.
They and former service coordinators are speaking out after seeing multiple To Investigate reports exposing abuse in the disabled care industry.
I said, I think it's time to step up here.
Finally, somebody is going to start looking into all of this. There's no oversight in the regional centers.
Regional centers are nonprofit corporations. There are 21 across the state, 5 in the Bay Area region. The state's Department of Developmental Services contracts with these agencies to serve more than 300,000 disabled clients statewide. Every year, there are more clients. Every year, more taxpayer money goes into the system. Mitch Freeze says the lack of oversight of services is worse than you can imagine.
You watched your child suffer broken bones. The bones in both eye sockets were broken from a beating by a staff member. He suffered a broken collarbone by a staff member.
Issues with his son's care started small, he says. He and his wife first reported basic hygiene neglect and bedwetting problems while Joe was under the care of a company hired by the North Bay Regional Center in Napa. The service provider was supposed to look after Joe, while the regional center was supposed to monitor the provider. More than a year later, Joe's parents were reporting indescribable living conditions.
Where the mattress was so urine-soaked that it went clear through the mattress, rotted the box springs, and the bed was on the floor with no sheets. And yet, nobody cares.
The responses they got were the same, they say. We're working on it, a regional center employee wrote multiple times in an email. Someone will go to Joe's house, he said in another. 14 months after their first report, the regional center told them the care provider was getting a new director, and they were still working on relocating their son.
By a show of hands, who thinks this is a bigger issue than has ever been reported? Who spoke out before but felt no one heard you?
I can't say that there's no abuse and neglect going on. We're not in every single home.
Javier Zaldivar oversees the San Andreas Regional Center. He can't legally talk about specific cases, but says the system is strained by low pay rates for services set by the state.
It's very difficult to find a staff with a skill set that will be able to deliver that kind of service. We do our best to make sure that cases aren't falling through the cracks.
Have there ever been deaths as a result of a lack of oversight? Or sex assault or neglect?
There have been incidents that have been questioned, and oftentimes the questions are, was the appropriate staffing in place? I don't know if it's about oversight, if it isn't more about the quality of the staff that is providing the care.
Whatever the reasons, these families feel the state is failing on its promise to support the disabled.
Is that promise being kept?
I think the promise is complicated.
For now, Freeze says his family and others live in fear of the uncertain.
There comes a day when you got to get on that airplane and go home. And you hope you've negotiated better conditions when you leave. But you know in the back of your mind that something else is going to happen.
1 minute, we're just having a good time.
A single moment.
And that's when everything just blacked out.
Can change everything.
And he just stomps on my face. Last thing I expected is to get assaulted by the workers, you know, at the business.
April 12, 2015, Carlos Garay was in San Francisco with his brother. They were drinking. They tried getting into Penthouse nightclub on Broadway. Surveillance video shows the guard refusing them entry. Garay approaches the guard. His brother gets in between. Then Garay tries to go in again when another man, later identified as the bartender, punches him. With Garay down but seemingly still conscious, the bouncer stomps on his head.
It changed everything.
Alyssa Sines is Garay's girlfriend. and mother to their 10-year-old son.
It's still really hard to talk about.
Garay suffered a traumatic brain injury. Doctors removed the right side of his skull, leaving him with memory loss and seizures.
A lot of doctor visits, a lot of medical issues. It's just hard going from being healthy to all these issues now.
The guard, Jared Welty, is serving 5 years at San Quentin State Prison for felony assault. Garay says at least he survived.
Some people weren't so lucky, you know.
Like 24-year-old Danny Escovel of Palo Alto.
I feel like he died alone. It's probably one of the hardest things for me as a mom.
Less than a month before the San Francisco incident, Blanca Martinez's son was at Myth Taverna and Lounge in San Jose. Security cameras recorded Escovel with the front door guard Jose Bonilla when Bonilla throws a punch.
He punches him once and then twice.
The force propels Bonilla to the middle of the street. According to the police report, Escovel fell to the ground, striking his head on the concrete.
So I never got a chance to say bye to him. I never got to see him at the hospital.
A coroner's report shows the death was ruled a homicide. 2 investigators obtained video of Bonilla's police interrogation interview.
And then what happens next? We shut the door and that's it.
After telling police 2 versions of what happened that contradict surveillance video,
you're telling me lies, and you're gonna get in trouble for telling me lies.
Bonilla gives a 3rd account.
He gets in my face, he swings at me, hits me in my chin, and that's when I react. I was scared. I didn't know it was gonna turn like that.
Bonilla served 8 months in jail for involuntary manslaughter.
So in this report, it says employees at the Myth Club were told by management not to call 911 for the victim.
Yeah, I just don't understand it.
Witness Snapchat video captured the moments after the punch. You see a man helping put Escovel's lifeless body into a pedicab.
No one is calling for any help. 911 should have been there. If you're going to be working with the public like that, you need to make sure that you know how to handle it, situation.
And handling situations like these requires proper security guard licensing. Proper licensing would have meant a full criminal background check and job-specific training, which includes skills to de-escalate situations. But 2 investigators learned at both Penthouse and Myth, the bar security guards involved in these cases had canceled licenses.
I saw the employees keep coming in and out and standing there around watching like it was a show.
How does that make you feel?
Mad. Angry.
Garay is now suing Penthouse in civil court. In a deposition last January, a valet employee told attorneys, quote, "Everyone who worked at Penthouse was kind of just considered like a security team," end quote. Were you provided any training at all to do that, he was asked? No. Did anyone ever train you in when you should call the police when you shouldn't? No. Did you ever call the police? No.
It's probably around 70% that are not truly fully licensed.
CEO and president of Nightclub Security Consultants and former police detective Robert Smith says there is an underground industry of untrained guards. Under California law, if an in-house security guard interacts with the public and wears a distinctive uniform, that person has to receive what's called a proprietary private security officer license. It includes job-specific training. In the case of bars and nightclubs, that means how to deal with drunk patrons, violence, and other specific issues. Instead,
the biggest loophole that's being used is the fact that club operators will hire the cheapest level of guard, and that happens to be the guard card.
Getting the so-called guard card, Smith says, is receiving the most generic form of training. At Penthouse and Myth, Jared Welty and Jose Bonilla not only had canceled licenses, but they only had canceled guard cards. Is the guard card enough?
It should be enough, but I don't believe it's enough.
What do you think of the guard card?
BS. Guard training don't train you for nightclubs.
Well, you can stand here long enough, you'll see crazy things.
State officials say it is the employer's responsibility to ensure their guards are licensed and trained. So we tried tracking down the owners of Myth and Penthouse. You were trying to look for your owner? The state oversees licensing for both guards and employers.
There is an underground industry of unlicensed, untrained guards. Is the state aware of this?
We hear from consumers on a regular basis and from the general public of unlicensed activities, so we know it does exist, and we are trying to do our best.
Veronica Harms with California's Bureau of Security and Investigative Services says the Bureau can partner with local law enforcement to take action against the business, but she says they usually find out about unlicensed activity from the public or news agencies.
But don't you think it's too late by then?
We encourage people to notify us at any point of the process.
But Blanca Martinez wants to know, what good are laws if they're not followed or enforced?
So senseless. There's so many things about that are wrong.
I never meant for this to happen. I'm gonna be calm right now telling you, but I'm dying inside. I don't.
Danny talked about forgiveness. Danny talked about not letting your heart turn ugly. So I'm trying to be that.
But when lives have been changed by a single moment, the survivors are left wondering, did it have to?
Shouldn't have ended the way it did.
Candice Steele says the birth of her baby Hope was a blessing and a curse.
It was a blessing to have my child, but it's also a curse that I had to endure that. No woman should have to do that, no matter where they are in jail, you know, no matter. They shouldn't have to be ignored like that.
July 21st, 2017, Steele found herself in custody at Alameda County Santa Rita Jail.
I was 8 months pregnant, about to pop.
Sheriff's deputies had arrested Steele and her boyfriend at a homeless encampment here in Castro Valley, charging the couple with trespassing and child endangerment. Steele's case was later dismissed.
They put me in the isolation cell, and I still wasn't feeling right. Maybe 15 minutes later, after I saw the nurse, I was crawling to the toilet to go throw up, and that's when my water broke.
Steele had been sent to the hospital, but sent back to jail because doctors said she wasn't in labor. Court documents show a jail nurse then said Steele was exaggerating, and deputies put her in an isolation cell as punishment.
I noticed that they shut the little window on me to muffle my screams.
What she was about to go through, Steele says, is nothing anyone should be forced to endure.
I just sat back on the concrete slab, pushed a little bit, and then stood up, pulled her head out. Then a couple minutes later, the deputy opens the door, and I'm standing there in a puddle of my own blood with my baby in my arms, and all the deputy could say was, "Oh, okay." And I just couldn't believe that they would put me through that knowing that I was pregnant.
6 months before, Cindy Toronto of Richmond found herself in the same jail.
Going through a very difficult divorce.
Arrested for violating a restraining order.
I was put in this detention cell. I don't know the specific names of it.
Toronto says after asking 4 times, you just wanted feminine products.
I just wanted feminine products.
It took more than 6 hours for staff to give her a pad.
I bled through everything.
Deputies released Toronto the next morning. Charges were never filed.
So I walked out of jail, soaked, covered in blood, and had to take the bus to BART.
Were you angry?
I was ashamed of basically being a woman.
No weapons, no pocket knives.
2 investigators reached out to Alameda County. Sheriff Greg Ahern agreed to give us a rare, personal, in-depth tour of Santa Rita Jail that he's overseen for more than a decade.
We disagree, we strongly disagree, and we're going to show you exactly what we do for women in our custody.
We told Ahern about the 29 women, including Toronto and Steele, who've sued the county in the last 4 years, saying they were mistreated at Santa Rita Jail. Attorney Yolanda Huang represents all the plaintiffs.
We identified 29, so that does seem like a big number.
It's a big number of inmates. I will agree to that. That's a number of inmates who are seeking financial reward for staying in our facility.
Surrounded by his team of department heads.
This is one of the cleanest facilities you'll ever step foot in.
We went from unit to unit.
And this is our clinic, our trauma room. We also have a pharmacy here.
The sheriff showed us the OBGYN department, stacks of menstrual pads, toilet paper, and other sparkling clean spots.
Very proud of us, even our doorknobs are polished brass.
For those who think it's because KTVU's here, it's all cleaned up. Some people might think that.
We have this scheduled. So this scheduled well before you told me you're going to come out here to the jail.
It would be impossible to clean this thing in a day, a week.
The sheriff's team even showed us the very isolation cell where Steele gave birth.
With that case, she was obviously pregnant and screaming for help, and she says no one came.
So,
how is that possible?
well, she was, I can't talk about that case.
Candice, we're not denying that the baby was not born in our jail, obviously. But we're saying that there's more to this than just what that story is. There's a series of events that happened prior and during, and so.
And what is that?
Well, I can't, obviously, yeah, so.
As for Cindy Toronto's case,
So we filed a motion in court denying that, and the motion is currently being heard.
So you're saying it didn't happen?
Correct.
a study by the nonprofit Prison Policy Initiative shows women have become the fastest growing segment of the nation's incarcerated population. Alex Keitstura is the legal director of the organization.
Jails and prisons were built and have historically housed mostly men, and that continues to be true till today. They're not really meant to handle women who have different needs.
Ahern says that's not the case at Santa Rita.
We designed this facility specifically to take in those considerations.
As the sheriff continued to lead me around, our photographer stayed behind to shoot video and ended up speaking candidly with inmate Paula Ewing. She says she's happy with her treatment.
And when I came here, oh my God, this is the best medical facility in the world because I didn't know I had cancer in my uterus.
When you hear people say there was feces on the wall, blood everywhere, and tampons stuck everywhere, does that make you angry?
You mean the people that are in custody for murder, rape, robbery, who have lied their entire life and they make things up habitually, who have...
Well, the 4 women we spoke to, they got their cases dismissed.
Are we perfect? No, but we continue to make improvements.
If you were to give your jail a grade in terms of how it's addressing women's needs, what would you give it?
I give it an A. I think we're the best big jail in the nation.
They knew they screwed up, and they just want to say or do anything to try to make me look bad so it can make them look even better.
Steele and Toronto say their cases have become bigger than them, still a blessing and a curse.
I'm scared.
Why?
Because speaking up doesn't always work in people's favor.
Women who have gone through what I went through need to step up and not be afraid anymore, because there is somebody who's going to stand up to the sheriffs, and that's me. That's Candice Steele.